Matters with Paul Rosen.
Our diets, our Western diets in America are just really, you just don't realize how poor they really are.
What would you say to others who would like to feel better?
Sometimes you need to find the instruction. That's where the testing and everything comes in, because without that knowledge, there's no way I could have got to the point where I'm at today.
Straight talk about health.
And then I start preaching and telling them what I've been doing. And this guy named Paul Rosen has changed my life.
With your host, Paul Rosen.
By the way, the information contained in this program is not approved by the FDA, nor intended to treat, diagnose, or claim to cure any medical condition or disease as defined by Western medicine. However, skilled practitioners of many disciplines have found nutrition response testing to be a highly reliable, supportive technology for assessing the health and fitness of the body's functional system.
If you are obese, if you're a smoker, if you eat a lot of salt, if you drink a lot of alcohol or a lot of coffee, you could be at risk for acid reflux. Those are risk factors in this particular condition. So, Paul, let's start with that. What exactly is acid reflux?
I mean, you just dumped on, three-quarters of the population.
I just took away your whole thing.
You just dumped on three-quarters of the population.
Well, that's
right
true,
there.
and I think every factor I mentioned there is something that could lead to poor health, obviously, but in particular, it could be a factor in acid reflux. And you're right, many of us are guilty of those things. I consume a lot of salt, to my shame, I suppose, and I drink a lot of coffee too.
So let's take a few of those factors now that you mentioned them. Number one, salt. Not a big deal if you're eating sea salt. It's just not a big deal. I have never once in my clinic ever had to alter anybody's salt intake. Not once in 25 years.
But it's the type of salt that matters, right?
Correct.
Not the volume.
Correct. Sea salt.
What about
caffeine? Some people in their conditions actually require the consumption of much more salt than someone else. And to prevent them from eating it is actually putting their health in jeopardy. So this whole warning about salt is really more about the consumption of salt, generally speaking, in highly processed and toxic foods. Like prepared meats, for example, that have lots of salt and lots of synthetic chemical preservatives and flavorings and colorings and all of these things. And the real question is it the salt that's the problem or all the chemicals that are included in the food?
And you're referring to your Big Macs, your Whoppers, and so on, right?
Well, I'm talking about like deli meats, for example.
Really?
Oh, absolutely.
They are loaded with salt.
Loaded with salt and plumpers and preservatives, and I mean it's a chemical festival. It's a chemical festival.
You said plumpers?
Yeah.
What's a plumper? I know it's self-explanatory, but it's not a term I hear very often. Plumper.
Yeah, makes the like a piece of meat that has a little bit of give to it. Yeah.
So they pump that stuff in there, and it gives
they pump stuff into all kinds of deli meats, literally.
And it gives it, and basically, I think some of that is not just for flavor or for preserving; it's also for appearance. You're making that thing look much better than it really is.
Well,
right?
all of the colorings are there for presentation.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. The taste enhancers, flavor enhancers. I mean, the chemists are busy in the food labs trying to hook human taste buds into into making it almost impossible with respect to eating only one.
But just making the food.
You get what I just said?
Yes, I did.
Yeah,
but
I mean
also,
that's the hook. So the bottom line is if you're eating any kind of processed food, then you're basically digging your grave one bite at a time, as one of my mentors and predecessors used to say. And so. We're talking digestive disorders, acid reflux. If you go on the web and you look at acid reflux, you'll see, in various, on various sites, that Big Pharma and its ilk And the professionals related to it will tell you that there's no cure for acid reflux. This is nonsense. This is ridiculous. Right? I've been helping people with acid reflux for decades.
They say there's not even a pharmaceutical cure for acid reflux?
No cure.
Only treatments, right?
Right.
Is that what they're saying?
Only management.
Okay, so take this and you'll feel better.
Only management. Right? Over 15 million people experience these types of conditions. 50% of men and women between the ages of 45 to 64, 50% of that population group between 45 and 64 are basically experiencing some sort of digestive dysfunction, specifically acid reflux or its ilk, right? That's incredible. And as I said, according to Big Pharma, can't be cured. So when you're working in the conservative world of healthcare, and you aren't aware that there are safe, natural, and effective options that can actually eliminate and get your body to heal itself. Remember my mantra, the perpetual healing machine, which is the body. Then you're lost. I mean, you're basically hooked. This is your only source, and your only source says can't be cured. That's crazy. It's totally crazy. And criminal, as far as I'm concerned. At least criminal with respect to, denting and maybe even eliminating hope for people. It's awful.
And also, does acid reflux vary in severity?
Yes.
Okay, so you can have perhaps mild symptoms in some cases, and in others, it's much more serious.
The interesting thing is that people experience, this is a little sort of, how should I say, counterintuitive would be the best way to say it. And that is that the people who experience acid indigestion actually most of them suffer from too little stomach acid as opposed to too much.
That sounds very counterintuitive. Also, our terms here, Paul, acid indigestion, acid reflux, are these all different things or symptomatic of the same thing?
When you get one is a diagnosis, the other is an experience.
So indigestion, is that a diagnosis?
Yeah, I mean, you say somebody says I have indigestion.
Right, it's a very broad term.
I'm belching.
Right.
I'm belching.
And maybe that's my
I have
point.
a bitter taste in my mouth or something like that. Yeah.
I think many of us feel any kind of pain in our stomach or what you just described, and we'll just say indigestion. It's like a big generic term for a number of things, right?
It's a suitcase term.
Okay, there you go.
Something I heard the other day.
A suitcase term?
Like a suitcase term. Yeah.
Okay, I'll buy that. I'm good with that.
It carries
it's a
lot.
suitcase term.
It's a suitcase term.
All right.
You like that, huh?
I like that. That's good. That's very self-explanatory and gets right to the
point. So,
point.
Again, most people don't understand that they are experiencing the effects of too little stomach acid, not too much. And the stomach acid and the balance in the stomach is so critical overall to quality of life. So critical. As you mentioned in your initial remarks, right? We've got over 100 trillion bacteria in our bodies. 100 trillion. Is that crazy or what?
That's a whole bunch of bacteria.
Right? We have, in terms of weight, we've got at least 10 times, the amount of bacteria as we do human cells in our body. It's crazy.
Which also speaks to the point, these are good and bad bacteria, is that correct?
This is, when we say good and bad, it's relative, because we need whatever is there in order to metabolize the food that we ingest. We need it there in order to maintain a healthy immune system. So the real question is there a lack of balance? So, for example, utilizing antibiotics will throw that balance off dramatically. So you may end up with too much bacteria that are harmful when they're not being monitored, because the good bacteria monitor what would otherwise be harmful, right? just sort of like cowboys would be herding cows, right? They get spread all over the place or in places they shouldn't be. Then that's a problem. But cows themselves are not a problem.
I assume, too, that there are many other factors besides antibiotics which can throw that system out of whack.
Oh, absolutely. First and foremost is what you put in your mouth. My wife, Cheryl, gave me an article from the paper. We get the New York Times, and she gave me an article from the paper, and it was about somebody's experience with Honey Nut Cheerios. It was really interesting. And this person was talking about, generally they eat just Cheerios, and they feed their children Honey Nut Cheerios. And the industry describes something like Honey Nut Cheerios as pre-sweetened. Right? That's their term, pre-sweetened. They're like the industry, the food industry is basically governed by, attorneys who parse language, essentially as a result, not telling necessarily an untruth, but basically masking what's really going on.
Acid reflux, you say it's like herding cattle in a sense.
No, I said the bacteria.
Right,
we were talking about the bacteria.
Right, but trying to keep that acid reflux under control is a matter of herding your cattle properly within your biome.
No, you twisted my words. I'm saying, in any case, you asked me, were there other ways besides antibiotics that could
wait,
disrupt?
Did I miss that metaphor? I was on the phone to my cattle broker thinking this was the way to better health. Yeah, so try and clarify that for us.
Good pasture-raised meat is actually quite good for you. So get on the phone to your cattle broker, and particularly that broker that sells pasture-raised, non-GMO fed, and hormone-free, meat. Beef, absolutely. That's what's for dinner.
I think for the sake of clarity, it's very much to our advantage to get away from agriculture-related metaphors at this point and maybe go right on to acid reflux.
Yeah. So other ways in which you can disrupt the balance, this bacterial balance, which, by the way, now that we're talking about it, has a term to describe it. It's called the microbiome. And, it's what you put in your mouth that counts. If you're eating a lot of processed foods and a lot of sugary foods, which is why I got into this Honey Nut Cheerio, side road, because it turns out that there's 9 times as much sugar. The first 3 ingredients are sugar, brown sugar, and honey.
That should tell you enough all by itself.
And this person is feeding their children. Kids. This person is feeding their children, right? So Cheerios was actually an oat cereal. Right. Didn't have much going all the way back, many, many decades. The addition of the sugar just, has created a monster.
It's amazing to me that after all these years, Paul, I ate sugar cereals when I was a kid, all kinds of stuff, Frosted Flakes all across the board, Lucky Charms. We could probably list dozens of kids' cereals that are bad for you. I'm really surprised that at this point in our history, we haven't figured out yet how terrible these things are for kids.
Well, the really weird thing is after this person wrote the article, the person who they wrote the article about, right, said, well, I'm don't worry, General Mills. I'm still going to be buying your cereal. Now I know, exactly, now that I know exactly what's in it, I'm still going to be buying it. I just shook my head. And feeding your kids this stuff. The recommended serving for a cereal like that is 3/4 of a cup. And as the person wrote in the article, they poured 3/4 of a cup in a cereal in a bowl, like a typical cereal bowl that an American would use. And it was very sad.
It was a small amount or a big amount?
It was so small that they realized that there isn't any person who eats the recommended serving size.
Right. So you take a regular size bowl in your kitchen and put in, your Captain Crunch. You're going to have much more than 3/4 of an ounce of a cup or 3/4 of a cup.
Absolutely. You're going to have double or triple in that bowl easily. And the amount of sugar that you're consuming is astronomical. And no human body can withstand that kind of insult.
And also, I don't
let alone morning after morning after morning.
It doesn't make me radical to say that really the advisable recommended serving of any cereal like that, so loaded with sugar and junk, is 0. You shouldn't be eating that stuff at all.
Not at all. And that includes the Cheerios themselves, because if you look in there, there's still a sugar in it. It's just not as much as Honey Nut Cheerio. And by the way, the title of the cereal, again, this is the parsing of the attorneys. They can call it Honey Nut Cereal because there's some kind of almond flavoring in it.
Right.
There are no nuts in it. Just some kind of almond flavor.
I think the name Honey Nut Cheerios, and I don't know this for a fact, I'm just speculating, it sounds vaguely healthy when you say nut in there. If they just called them Honey Cheerios, well, that doesn't sound healthy. Honey Nut Cheerios.
Like I said, you have to understand that this is the world we live in. This is the information that we are fed, literally, day after day. It is no wonder why we have such a sick population in general, and why 50% of the 45 to 65-year-olds or 64-year-olds have some kind of digestive disturbance like acid reflux or acid indigestion on a regular basis.
And maybe this long digression on cereal serves our purpose and serves our topic in the sense that we start these habits early. You know, when we're very young, we're eating Captain Crunch and Honey Nut Cheerios and all that kind of stuff. So we're starting our bad habits almost immediately, and acid reflux and other bad things are the result.
And the things like diabetes and insulin resistance and others, it makes it more understandable when you realize that people are doing this day in and day out. But not just one meal. What's a snack? A snack is a granola bar, which is just loaded with sugar. And somebody will say, but yeah, it's fruit sugar. But as I have shared with you, folks out there, consistently, fruit sugar is worse for your liver, especially concentrated fruit sugar, is worse for your liver than just sucrose or cane sugar alone.
Not only that, but a lot of these granola bars, like the ones you buy in vending machines, you know, you find those all the time. Those are marketed as being healthy for you. They're the healthy alternative, supposedly, to a Snickers or a Three Musketeers. But as you just said, Paul, they're really no better at all.
It's just laughable. It's laughable. If it weren't so true, right, it's just so sad. People really believe that these foods, these cereals, are actually healthy for you. And nothing could be farther from the truth. Not anymore. Not anymore. And it's because of the adulteration. It's because of the destruction of the soils that the food is grown in. And somebody was asking me the other day, well, how come I need supplements? Why do I need supplements? And basically we need supplements because the food that is grown does not contain the same nutrient density that it once did because the soils are depleted. The issue there is, the coughing is usually a heart symptom, and of course the nausea and vomiting are a gallbladder symptom. And what else did you say?
I think that was it. You got my whole list there. Asthma. Yeah. I mentioned asthma.
Yeah. Well, it's usually more related to, all of these things are actually related to your endocrine system. And any time you ever have a symptom, this is really important, folks. Anytime you have a symptom, it means that you are not regulating. And what that means is it means that your body is a self-regulating mechanism. And it is regulated by your nervous system, in particular the autonomic nervous system, in connection with organs and glands that we call endocrine glands. And when those things get disrupted, then your body starts to send out signals, just like your dashboard on your car, where, green lights and yellow lights and red lights pop up. Yeah. And the green lights and red lights and yellow lights are the symptoms, especially when you get the green light is the lack of symptoms, and yellow means something's happening, and red means you better fix this.
So those
right
are
away.
things that can alert you that something is wrong. Acid reflux in particular, Paul, does that occur in the esophagus? Is it necessarily in your throat, or is that just part of the process?
No, that's part of the process. It's
Okay.
coming from your stomach and due to the belching and bloating, and there's a little valve in there that separates the stomach from the esophagus. And if there's enough backflow, that stomach acid will basically make its way into your esophagus and irritate it. And if that continues over time, you can develop ulceration, chronic inflammation. And if that continues over time, you might even develop cancer. But the bottom line is you really have to be ignoring it for a long period of time for something that severe to occur.
Is there pain involved
Yes.
in this? You'll actually feel it
Burning.
in there.
Yeah.
One of
You'll
the
feel it.
symptoms is also trouble swallowing. So I assume, again, that's why I got to the esophagus. I assume because there's something going wrong in there, you may even have that problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's totally, and because, as I said much earlier in the program, because you think that's there's no cure, and certainly that's what the big pharma is promoting, then you're just trying to manage it, and unfortunately you're managing it with medications that have extreme side effects to them. Including increasing your risk of heart attack. I could go through the whole list. So many things, right? And you're actually not changing a thing. You're not actually addressing the root cause whatsoever. And so the root cause can be addressed. There is a way to address the root cause of this and shut down the whole pattern. Absolutely. I've done it. I've worked with many people who have decided to take control of their health. They made the lifestyle changes. Because you can't, if you don't want to change your lifestyle, then you aren't going to change this phenomenon. And you are going to be a slave to, proton pump inhibitors like Nexium, Prilosec, Prevacid, right? And they essentially not only reduce your body's ability to produce hydrochloric acid, which is essential for digesting your foods, for extracting the minerals from your foods, by protecting you, because that is the first one of the first lines of defense for your immune system, right? And it will prevent you from digesting your proteins, right? And the fourth reason is that these drugs are associated with creating vitamin deficiencies, like vitamin B12. Symptoms like fatigue, mental imbalance, anemia, and nerve damage are linked to vitamin B deficiencies.
And so to summarize, Paul, these proton pump inhibitors and other treatments, they're actually trying to lessen the amount of acid in your body, but you're destroying acid that you need.
The theory is, and why these things were created, is that people experience this chronic acid indigestion or ultimately acid reflux because of too little stomach acid. But nothing could be further from the truth.
So to use your cattle herding analogy, let's say you're trying to herd your cattle properly, the proton pump inhibitors would be like herding a certain portion of those cattle right off a cliff.
I don't know. I'm not following that.
I thought that was pretty easy to follow, actually.
No, we're not talking about the cattle that we were referring to metaphorically was the bacteria in your gut.
Well, I'm extending that analogy.
Yeah, you're going you're going over a cliff.
Now the cattle are the acid. This is why we don't use metaphors and analogies here on the program.
I see you've switched in mid thought.
Yes. I changed the
Now you're confusing everybody, and you're confusing me. We want this to be clear and concise.
Oh no, I'm not confusing you. I think I'm making it very clear.
So the other medications besides the ones that I mentioned, the proton pump inhibitors are prescription medications, and then of course there's a ton of over-the-counter medications, right? Like Tums and other types of things, which unfortunately. Maybe Tums has changed now, but they used to contain aluminum.
I wasn't aware of that. I think these over-the-counter things, Tums, for example, are very commonly accepted. I mean, many people...
Very commonly accepted.
Well, they again, we go back to maybe the difference between indigestion, that catch-all term, and something more serious like acid reflux. I think if people have a bad stomach, especially, say, after a big meal or something like that, they may reach right for the Tums or something equivalent.
Yeah. So... Yeah, I'm just looking. I did a real quick search to see if they continued to contain aluminum.
But I wonder too, Paul, if people do get temporary or immediate relief from that pain or indigestion, they may think, "Hey, this is great. Hand me more Tums."
Isn't that the truth? And around and around she goes.
But in effect, the point here being, they really haven't solved anything. They've given themselves some temporary relief, as we said, from that immediate pain, but the long-term problem remains in effect.
It's like being in a boat with a rotted bottom, right? You spring a leak and you plug that one, and behind you pops another, and you plug that one, and then over to the side pops another, and that's the same thing as utilizing these over-the-counter and or prescription medications for, for acid reflux.
I thought we agreed no more analogies.
Well, I thought that was pretty
okay.
clear.
That one's pretty good.
Thank you.
That one's good.
So the bottom line is, what we agreed on was not to try to change it midstream and flip it around and change what actually your.
Oh, I thought we agreed no more cattle
using the metaphor
analogies.
That wasn't cattle. So the most important thing then is to understand that what you put in your mouth is absolutely critical to your overall, not just digestive health, but your overall health in general. Back to the Honey Nut Cheerios that I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Was that the idea that you think, that this person thinks that consuming a processed cereal which has got absolutely almost no nutrient density in it whatsoever, besides the synthetic fortification. Don't you like that word? Fortification.
Very well done.
Right? Of vitamins. It contains still a ton of sugar, and it's just plain unhealthy for you. Totally unhealthy. And the proof of that is that anybody who I ever helped restore complete and total balance to their digestive systems, right, could not eat anything like Honey Nut Cheerios or Cheerios in general. Just absolutely could not. Been a total failure if they continue to do so.
I don't know why anybody would eat Honey Nut Cheerios, quite frankly.
And, by the way, I'm not just picking on that. I'm talking about any processed cereals. That just happened to be the focus of that particular article in the newspaper. I
wonder if General Mills himself will call.
I don't know.
Because we're knocking his Honey Nut Cheerios.
I don't know. But, I'm totally open. Go ahead. Do whatever. I can prove, what I'm saying is true.
One more note, you can get a free chapter of Paul Rosen's book, The Missing Piece. Just go to his website, acunatural.com, acunatural.com, and fill out the dialog box that pops up. Rest assured, no information you provide will ever be shared with anyone else. So, what are you waiting for? Get going on your personal road to wellness today.